Okay, it's 3:00. Ann, if you'll call the roll. Oh, okay.
Okay. Reed Williams,
Here.
Dr. Cantu,
Present.
John Agather,
Here.
Anacua Garcia, Phyllis Villagran, Peter Anamtre, Andy Castillo, Al Rodriguez, Michael Kennick, Emma Reed, Jack Hebden,
Here.
Wayne Eddington, Anthony Edwards, Michael Sanchez,
Michael's gonna be late.
Didi Balmares, Kurt Anastasia.
Here. This is Mike Sanchez. I'm here.
Perfect, thank you. Chris Fullerton, Dana McGinnis,
Actually, he's gonna be on.
okay. Jim Berg,
Here.
Anita Ledbetter. She's not gonna be here. Miriam Juckett,
Here.
thank you. And we have no public speakers today.
Okay, we've got a quorum. We have no public speakers, so now we have the invocation. Mr. Reyes. Thank you.
Please join me for the invocation. We thank you for the many blessings that you freely given to each of us. And we ask for your presence to guide this meeting of the Rate Advisory Committee and provide them with the knowledge, compassion, and the wise counsel needed as they discuss the business matters on the agenda today. Help us all to remember that we are stewards acting on behalf of our customers and provide us with the grace to serve all people well. And we ask this in your name. Amen.
Thank you. Okay, we're right into the couple of administrative things and the opening remarks. First of all, I want everybody to be aware that due to numerous scheduling conflicts, the June meeting will be on the 29th, which is the last Thursday of June. We will have a different start time. It will be 4 p.m. instead of 3, but I promise I think we can be out in 2 hours. So I'm giving you back an hour, and I'll try to get you out on time. But it is scheduled from 4 to 7. Again, we're going to work on the third leg of the affordability triangle today. And the first presentation, I don't know if Jonathan or Rick is going to do it, but it's affordability and the demand management side. So whoever is up, if they're here. Okay, all right. They're always behind the post. Yep, well, I knew Rick was. I didn't know who was going to do it. Here you go. Take as much time as you need.
All right, thank you, Reed. Okay, very good. So we're actually going to tag team this presentation. I'll do the first part, and then Jonathan Tijerina is going to come up, and then after he's done, I'll wrap with a couple of slides. So our topic today is demand management. And of course, we've been looking at everything. We've been talking about affordability. Today, we want to talk about, how demand management can support affordability. And so we've got a number of slides to walk through. And really our goal is to talk about demand management, what we've learned about how to do that successfully, to help customers lower energy use and lower their bills. But we especially want to focus in on low-income customers and how we can support them through these types of efforts. So Reed mentioned the affordability triangle. Of course, we've seen this in past meetings. We talked in our first meeting back in February about bill relief and how do we directly help customers through direct assistance on their bill. In our case, we have an affordability discount program that helps us do that. Second meeting, we talked about conservation. That was last month. And, these are programs where we help customers improve the structure of their, and improve the envelope around their home, help them with rebates to have more efficient equipment in the home. We think of those as programs that help customers save, and we'll use the word passively. In other words, you make an improvement and you save energy, right? And you save energy every day. And so we talked a lot about the STEP program and how we do that through the STEP program. Today, we're going to talk about demand management, so third session. And so to differentiate what we talked about last month from what we're going to talk about today, it's how do we help customers actively save energy? In other words, actions that they can take, behavior that they can change to help them save energy and money. And so that'll be our focus. And one of the main areas we're going to talk about is how do we do that at the peak hours, right? So the most expensive time for us to serve customers is at the peak. And so we're gonna narrowly focus in on how can we help there. So as a starting point, this is a chart that our team put together, and I think it really tries, what we're trying to convey to you is that there's no one single way to do this. I mean, it's complicated. How do you get customers to pay attention to their energy use? How do you get them to take action? How do you get them to continue to take actions every day? It's complicated, but there's three parts to it. We're going to talk about each one of them. But if they all work together, it is achievable. First of all, there's price signals, and so that's the area that I work in, which is rate design. Programs like time of use and others help customers know what is the cost of energy, right? What is it costing to use power at a given point in time? How do those price signals, basically tell customers change your behavior, use power when it's less expensive. We'll get into some of that discussion. The second part is information and feedback. So if we tell customers, use less power at peak, use it off peak, well, you've got to give them information, right? Information that they can understand, it's actionable, and so a lot of that is communication, broad communication. But there's also feedback that's necessary. So if you were to put a customer on a price signal program, they've got to know that it's working for them. So are the steps, are they taking the right steps? Are they saving money? And that's where the feedback loop is really important. And then finally, technology has a role to play here. How can we make it easier for customers to take these actions? If we're asking customers to modify behavior, how do we give them the tools, the information, the technology to be able to do that in an easy way that doesn't disrupt their lifestyle? It actually helps improve their lifestyle. So we'll start diving into each of these. Oh, got a little delay here on the clicker.
Don't ask me.
Okay, I got it. So we'll talk about price signals first. What we've listed here are different types of price signals that are very common in the utility industry, and many of these we use at CPS today. So things like seasonal pricing, where you have different prices in the summer when you have more load, and lower prices in the winter would be an example of a seasonal price. Block rates, which is basically a way of saying that the more that you use, the more that you pay. And that's a common measure that you see in utilities. Demand charges or demand rates that charge customers more for usage at the peak time. We have those types of rates for our commercial customers, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then time of use, we're going to dive deeper into that one. Today we don't have customers on time of use. We do have commercial customers who are on a time of use rate. And there's an example in the appendix of what a bill for a commercial customer on that rate looks like. There's probably about 60 customers that take advantage of that today. Time of use, just to explain simply, is differentiated rates based on the usage patterns throughout the day. And so you basically take a price signal and you communicate to customers when during the day it's more expensive to use energy and when it's less expensive. And again, we'll dive into that a little deeper here. All right, so just want to show an example of a residential bill that does have seasonality built into it. So this is our residential rates. This is what a bill looks like. And what we're comparing here is a summer bill, which is June to September, and a non-summer bill, which is all the other 8 months of the year. So October to May. What customers see, I mean, it looks very similar, but there is one major difference, which we've indicated there, is that during the summer we have a peak capacity charge. And so that's an example of a seasonal price, right, signal, where we're setting a threshold. So for customers who use more than 600 kilowatt hours, they pay an incremental charge for that usage. So this is an example of both a seasonal price signal. It's also an example of that inclining block concept that we talked about, where the more you use, the more you pay. In this case, you know, customer used 1,400 kilowatt hours in the month. The first 600 is not subject to the peak capacity charge, but anything beyond 600 kilowatt hours, in this case, there's 815 kilowatt hours, does pay an incremental 2 cents. So for those kilowatt hours, they're paying 7 cents plus another 2 cents for that usage. So it is an escalating rate. Yes, sir.
Get a peak capacity charge, but it really doesn't have to do with when they used it around the peak. In other words, they could have used it all at night, and if they went over that amount, the number of kilowatt hours charged at the higher one. Really, it's a seasonal.
It's a seasonal charge. Yep. You're right. It's a seasonal charge. It's not specific to a time of day. It's any usage beyond 600 kilowatt hours. So you're right on that.
It's like your saws, summer price.
Yeah.
Yep.
What months constitute a summer bill? Your range?
For us, that is the 4 months from June to September. And then the other 8 months are are designated the non-summer months. There are just real quick, and then Al has a question. There are examples in the appendix of what our commercial rates look like. We didn't want to take all the time doing that in this meeting, but they are there. And if you have any questions, we're happy to talk through those. It was right here.
On this summer bill versus non-summer bill, do you have something that's more compatible as far as the same usage of electricity? Because right here, one is using 1,415 kilowatt hours, and the other is using 1,028 kilowatt hours.
So I mean, we could come up with an example like that. The reason we use these numbers is this is typically the differential we see. Of course, people tend to use more energy in the summer. And so we're pegging this to the pattern that we see in terms of how people actually use energy. But to your point, I mean, it could be, we could do it for, 1,400 on both scenarios, and show you what the numbers look like, so you can see directly what the impact is from that charge. We could follow up with that request. Okay, any other questions on this before we move on?
Yes, I put a question in the chat. This is Adelita Cantu. Does the peak capacity, this is for residential, does it look different for customers in that it's separated by small and large businesses? How does that look?
So we have examples in the appendix of what a commercial rate looks like. If you don't mind, let me just grab that real quick. So a commercial build, if you look at the slide deck, slide 25 and 26. Yeah, so if you look at slide 25, what you see here is a demand charge, which is a charge that appears both in the summer and the non-summer months. So that is unique to commercial customers. Our general residential customers do not have demand charges on their bill. And so the intent of the demand charge is to basically signal to customers, that there is an incremental cost to using energy, at peak, right? That drives capacity costs. And so that shows up on the bill, both in summer and non-summer. The one thing that's different is that in the summer, the demand charge is higher. So in this case, you see $11.87 per kW. So that's per unit of demand. And then in the non-summer, it's $9.11 for the demand in the non-summer months. Yes.
Where I saw it. Thank you. I don't remember where I saw it, but, and it's not reflected here, but I thought I saw somewhere where commercial customers, and I don't know which size, they actually have a declining block rate, correct?
So if you look at the energy charge, I think that's what you're referring to. On this example, the first 485, let's look at the summer section. The first 485,000 kilowatt hours are at the 3.9 cents rate. The next block is at a slightly lower rate. I think that's probably what you're referring to.
Right.
Yeah.
Why? Okay. Why is that? Like, why would somebody pay less when they use more?
Economies of scale.
Economies of scale. All right, makes sense.
It just,
Not if I
once
agree with
you've got some of the fixed costs of delivering, which is in our
cost of
variable
service.
costs, because we don't cover it all in our
Right.
fixed cost. Then as they use more, then obviously you don't have more transformers, more lines, more anything. So it's a small economy of scale,
I see.
which you can't get with water. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Reed. Okay, so why don't we go back to slide where we left off? Slide 7. Yep. Okay, so here we're gonna jump into time of use. Want to start with what the concept is. Just make sure that we have that foundation as we move forward in the presentation. Just a very simple illustration of what time of use is about. It's basically sending a signal to customers about when it's more expensive and when it's less expensive to use energy. So we've used dollar symbols there to kind of indicate more expensive and less expensive. You'll notice there's a black curve that represents usage of energy throughout the day. This is across our entire system. And the idea is, of course, I mean, no surprise, customers use less energy in the morning, overnight, and then the usage ramps up throughout the day, typically peaking, in the evening, anywhere between 5 and 9 p.m. And so with a time of use rate, the concept would be that you would basically align your pricing to reflect that usage pattern. And this is a summer illustration. Winter would be different. In the winter, generally usage is higher in the morning, and then it declines off of the morning peak. So again, in an example where you'd have winter, it might be you have higher prices in the morning, and then they decline after that morning peak is passed. So that's the general idea with a time of use rate. Again, we have this for commercial today, and we have time buckets, and there's a rate. And if you want to see an example, slide 26 has what that commercial time of use rate looks like. But we're talking about residential here. The theory with this is that if you can tell customers when it's more expensive or when it's less expensive, that they will modify their behavior to take advantage of that, right? So they might change when they do laundry. They might cook at a different time. They might turn off some appliances to try to take advantage of the differences in prices across time. And ideally, you would flatten, this curve would not be as steep, right? So you'd have a flatter curve, and that's important because the size of that peak drives a lot of cost for us, right? Because we've got to build a system that can serve the point of maximum energy delivery. And so if we can reduce that peak, that saves everyone, that benefits everyone. It's the kind of thing we're trying to do with the STEP program, right? Is reduce that peak, flatten the energy curve. So any questions on this? And then I'll jump into a little more detail.
The time of use is contingent on the use of the smart meters, is that right?
It to,
Oh, sorry. Oh, there it is. The time of use is contingent on the smart meters, right?
that's absolutely right. And so if you were going to bill a customer using this sort of a structure, you would need to be able to measure not just what they used in a day, but what they used in our case, every 15 minutes throughout the day. And to do that, you need advanced metering. You also need back-end systems to handle all of the data flow and the calculations that go with being able to bill for something like this.
Could you see a scenario where if everybody started doing their laundry and they had electric heaters and everything else from 4 to 7 a.m., that time use would increase? Would that cost eventually increase as well?
That's a great question. And let me jump to the next slide because I think it'll kind of get to the point you're getting at, which is, how much change can the customer make, right? How much can they change their pattern of usage to flatten that curve? And this is I think this is ultimately the challenge, right? Or the hurdle to overcome is this is based on load research. This is an illustration of how customers use energy. And what you'll see up here is that when we talk about fixed load, we think about the things that customers really can't change, right? For example, your refrigerator is going to stay plugged in all day long. You're not going to unplug it. If your family comes home at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, you've got to cook dinner. A lot of that is not changeable. Air conditioning, some of it is movable. Probably 20% of it you can change a degree or two, but we're never going to ask customers to turn off the AC, for 4 hours. You got to maintain comfort. Certainly in my house, we got to maintain comfort. We can change a degree or two, but you can't turn it off. And so typically this is what you see is about 80% of your load in the home is fixed. And then there's about 20% that's shiftable. In other words, things that can be delayed. The thermostat, you can change the temperature a degree or two without disrupting comfort very much. We've seen that in our demand response programs where customers can put up with that for 30 minutes or an hour in the afternoon. You can turn off lights. You can maybe turn off the TV or the computer. Maybe you can do laundry later in the day. So there are things you can do, but that's probably about 20% of the load. Some customers may have more, but this is generally speaking what we've seen in the data.
Have you ever thought about using the CPS app and showing real time where the customer's usage is compared to like the amount of charge per that hour? Or is that too much data can you even show that at?
So we have elements of that. So we do have tools that will tell you on Manage My Account, if there's a survey you walk through, it asks you about your home, how many people in the home and what appliances you have, and it will give you an idea of where you're using energy in the home. I did that for my own house yesterday, and it told me that water heating was my #1 use of energy in the home. So, and it gave me a nice pie chart that showed me kind of what target areas are. So there are tools to help you understand that. We haven't taken the step of then aligning that with like specific, pricing throughout the day. Again, we don't have the time of use capability built out at this point.
Okay, we got another question from Dr. Cantu, and then you're next. Al.
Thank you, Reed. So a question, I'm just thinking, to have a smart meter or to be able to get that information in real time, we're assuming that a person has a household, I should say, has that type of thermostat, a thermostat. However, we know that many homes have window units for their comfort, for their fans. So how are we thinking, we being us CPS, APS rated, how are we thinking about that when we're thinking about these issues on understanding demand?
Speaking on air conditioning and how do we help customers manage that usage? For most customers, for a lot of customers, it's the number one use of energy, especially in the summer, is the air conditioning load. You're right. A lot of what we do today with our demand response programs relies on Wi-Fi being in the home and our ability to communicate to a thermostat, send a signal to the thermostat to get it to, maybe back off a degree or two to save energy. And that's been very popular. I mean, a lot of customers like that, the convenience of that. The challenge is, okay, well, what if I don't have Wi-Fi in the home? Then how do we do that? I think that is a challenge, is not having Wi-Fi in the home. I will tell you though that there is a benefit just to have a programmable thermostat there, and that's something that we've in the STEP program done a lot of, is encourage customers to install a programmable thermostat. So even if it's not communicating through Wi-Fi, the thermostat will learn behavior, will change temperatures, and it'll help you get some of that savings without the added step of also having the Wi-Fi and the DR capability built in.
I'm not sure I understand that. So
We'll go over it in a minute again. We're getting another
you.
explanation here.
Hi, Dr. Cantu. It's Deanna Hardwick. So there's a difference between the smart meters and the smart thermostats. So the smart meters are are what we install on customers' homes, and we have 1.3 million smart meters out there. Now, the smart thermostats are the ones that a customer would need both Wi-Fi or like a programmable thermostat. We'll also have central air. However, with the smart meter, that's data that we're getting, and that's the work that Evan and myself talked about at the very first meeting when we talked about some of the technology that we're in the process of enhancing. I don't know if that helps.
Yes, very much so. Thank you.
Let's back up here a minute and be real careful. When you're talking about the smart meter, that is the CPS meter usually outside your home, right at your drop. The thermostat can either be a programmable thermostat. It can be one that you control with Wi-Fi. There's two different types of thermostats. Without Wi-Fi, you can buy a programmable thermostat that will move your temperature up and down, your thermostat up and down without Wi-Fi. So, while it's nice, and then of course what they're talking about in the Wi-Fi, and when they're talking about the Wi-Fi, that's when you're in the program that you sign up and you allow them to regulate your thermostat through the back door of that Wi-Fi connection, if you've got the one that they can do it with. So there's several things here we need to be careful when we're thinking about these, or it can get very confusing. Okay. And we got a question from Anaqua.
Hey, y'all, sorry I couldn't be there in person. So it sounds like time of use can potentially and will negatively affect low-income customers, those without I know you just said it, Reed, but I forgot the smart meter, correct?
Well, the smart meter is the smart meter that CPS installs outside your home.
There's one inside the home.
There's a
program that
program.
won't be able to adjust their time of use because they don't have the meter in their home. Potentially, they could see higher bills because they're going to be using energy when it's more expensive. So just starting to wonder, and I'm sure there's others, how can we begin to address that for those community members that won't be able to adjust their usage?
Okay, that's a good question. Let's just go back through that. There's two types of thermostats. There's a thermostat you can buy that does not require Wi-Fi, and you program in the time of day and where you want it to go as far as the temperature. There's also one that is Wi-Fi connected that you can control remotely. well, even without Wi-Fi, you can, and I think you support that, you purchase that, or you give them the money to purchase it, right? I don't think you install it, but you can probably call here and somebody could help you. But there is a thermostat that is not Wi-Fi connected. Obviously, it's connected to power because thermostat's connected to power, low voltage, but you can actually program that. So if everybody's leaving the home, you can have the thermostat on your air conditioner. Again, a good point, if you don't have central air conditioning, it's not possible. But if you do have central air conditioning, you can program it to drop it a few degrees and then bring it back up maybe an hour or so before you come home. Not ideal, but that is available unless I'm wrong.
No, that's right.
So you got to think about it in outside meter, which is a smart meter, inside thermostats, you've got programmable but not connectable, and then you have connectable ones. Okay, got a question here.
Let me just add a little bit to that though, but regardless of technology, with time of use rates, if a person knows that say between 4 o'clock and 7 o'clock in the evening, their rates are higher, they can turn things off or turn their thermostats down. So regardless of technology, somebody on a time of use rate can adjust their habits if they know what time a day the rates are higher.
That's right.
Got a couple of questions online. First, we've got Jim Berg, and then we got Marion. And go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, my question concerns the smart thermostat, which is a great idea. Did each of us did people with smart thermostats at one time agree with CPS to be able to allow CPS to alter that? And is that amendable after the agreement, or is that a permanent agreement? I mean, I noticed that.
Yeah, let's be careful with terminology. You've got smart connectable Wi-Fi ones, and you got smart ones that are not connectable. So what you're talking about, I think, Jim, are the Wi-Fi connectable smart thermostats.
That's correct. And I seem to remember, I'm not sure if it was with the house that I'm in now or prior, where I came to some agreement allowing CPS to, perhaps because they put in the thermostat, they didn't put in these in my house, and yet they do dial it up in that 5 to 7 p.m. time. Only when I start to feel a little hot do I remember, oh yeah, CPS has done that. Does each customer have the ability to alter that, or is that fixed?
Yeah, and so just to, as Reed said, terminology is important. So I just want to make sure it's clear that we're talking about smart thermostats that CPS Energy installed or provided a rebate on. If you go buy a smart thermostat at Best Buy and you install it and you never sign up for a program, like there's no way for us to control that. You have to sign up for a program to be in, and then for us to be able to dispatch control signals. So that's, I want to make sure.
And you have to be connected to the internet, and you have to be in the Nest program. So,
there's other thermostat brands, but yes, I mean, ultimately.
But the only one I understand you can get in the back door on is the Nest.
No, I have a Nest, and it is altered by CPS. My question is that fixed? Is that something that you guys will do unless I intervene, or once signed up, that's it? It's going to, from 5 to 7 on hot days, dial it up a few degrees.
No. So you have two options there. One is if we decide to send a signal on a day, you'll see a message on the thermostat. You can opt out that day just by changing the thermostat temperature. So that will get you out of that event, and you go back to normal settings. So you can do that every time we send you a signal, you can do that and just get out of the event, or you can get out of the program. You just call us. We'll take you out of the program. Now we pay you a $30 incentive, which you should get on your bill like in November every year. That's meant to keep you in the program. But if you decide to get off, then you would lose the $30. But otherwise, you're not on an obligation. You're not under an obligation to stay on the program.
Thank you. I understand. So it does renew annually. Okay, thank you. I was unaware of that.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Miriam,
Hi, I put my question in the chat, but I'm happy to re-ask. And by the way, Jim, I think the program.
please
name
do.
is
We
the
can't,
Ballot
we can't,
program.
we can't read it here. We gotta-
That's all right. That's okay. I was asking if CPS Energy had programmable thermostats available through some sort of a program for low-income customers to address Anakwa's concern about the environmental justice concern of asking customers to buy something.
Yes, and so I'm gonna look at Nick so he can nod and tell me this is still the case. But customers who are low income and customers on our weatherization program, we offer them a free thermostat as part of the program, and so they can take that and we will install. I think it's a Nest. Yeah, Nest thermostat in the home for low income customers.
Thank you.
Peter,
Thank you, Reed. Thank you, Rick, for the presentation. Kind of in line with that last question, with the time of use and how far out, what's the timeline where we can actually roll out a comprehensive time of use program?
So I have a slide that speaks to that at
Okay.
the end to talk about timing and the technology to support it.
Okay.
And that's a great question, and we will answer that.
And my follow-up to that is, if you roll a pilot out, can you roll something out between here and there that's very targeted? And much to the question of where people would, and I think Sacramento Municipal Utility District did one that Battle did a report on that showed how they compare the LMI. So I'm curious if that's something that could be considered in the short term. And then even when we do launch the comprehensive, if we do start with a pilot and start to identify how it's going to impact that low income customer. But that's my question.
Okay, and we will tackle that on the last slide.
Al,
Thank you.
Okay, so you're putting the dots kind of close to me. I'm going to connect the dots. Tell me if I'm right or wrong. To conserve is going to be the best thing for me to do is to buy gas appliances, gas water heater, gas stove, gas oven, and a gas clothes dryer. Because at that point, I'm not using electricity, or I'm using very little. Because the biggest draw for electricity in any house is anything that generates heat. And obviously the oven, the clothes dryer, the water heater, those electric, when those things, talking old school, it'll really make your meter spin at that point. So gas is the best thing to do. Can we go on record on saying that that's the most conservative thing?
No, I mean,
It's a trick question, Rick. Yes. Yes.
I figured.
Yeah. I'm boxing you in, but gas, we can't lose gas because it's going to make all our electric bills go higher. And we're trying to reduce that.
okay, Dee Dee. Push the button.
Sorry, time of use rates, time of use is, for customers to shift their load away from peak time, not, I think, I don't know if that helps to understand. It's not about conserving, it's about shifting your use to a time when, outside of peak time, when the rates or the cost of electricity is higher. I don't know if that helps to understand. It doesn't mean we all have to, use gas appliances, because obviously that's not realistic, because there are places where, like my house, I can't use any type of gas appliance. And that's where I really would hope that we could also talk about inclining block rates, because for those people that it's more difficult to shift use, like people who live in multifamily units, that's where an inclining block rate would be more beneficial. So I hope, like, we're going to talk about, not just time of use, but also inclining block rates and the different ways that we could possibly approach customers with their rates. I know we're going to talk about prepay as well. I think everybody here has some really good questions. Like, if we're having a lot of questions and trying to wrap our head around it, imagine customers who have all kinds of obstacles, literacy, whatever, it's going to be hard for them. But I think with a well-designed, well-thought pilot program that we could do some type of time of use rate for customers.
Which is a great lead into the next slide, which is, so we have a team that has done a lot of research on time of use, looked at what other utilities have done across the country, where has it worked well, where has there been challenges, and maybe things have been rolled back. This is our sort of learnings from what has worked well with time of use deployments. The first one is, the price points, the time buckets, which is to say like the times of day when the prices are, different. All of that needs to be very clear. There needs to be an incentive to customers to change their behavior. It needs to be enough to make it worthwhile. At the same time, you've got to balance, for the load that you cannot move, you can't overly penalize that because, otherwise customers end up with higher bills, and then that's not a good outcome. So the design of the rate is very important. Got to be very clear, very easy to understand for customers. So that's definitely a lesson that we have taken away. Secondly, technology can help. So things like programmable thermostats, anything that can help customers program, things so that they don't have to maybe every day make changes. It can already be set. It's set it and forget it. It just makes it easier. And so some of that is technology, and some of that is things like solar. So if you have a solar system on your house, you're probably generating energy in the afternoon, and so you're going to get the benefit of that lower, or rather, you're going to lower your usage when it's more expensive, right? And so that will save money. If you have an electric vehicle, right, that's one where you can charge it at night when it's cheaper, and so that technology piece it can really help make it easier for customers. And then the last one, which is the communication, the feedback. So customers need to have a very good understanding of how the program works. What they should do, what are some tips, and then they need the feedback to tell them, is it working, right? So that if you try to do some things differently, at the end of the month, how did that work, right? And how can I change behavior? How can I make sure that it works for me? And then it's a sustainable practice, right? It's something I do every day. So really, really important to have all three elements together.
Let me just follow up on Dee Dee's point. It's pretty important. You got to kind of step back at a 40,000 feet low. Why are we doing this? Okay. And she's right. I mean, if you're going to use X amount of power, you're just shifting it from time to the other. But that's load leveling. So it does two things that we need to think about. Their secondary effects beyond the customer. One, it reduces the overall cost on the utility because we don't have to maintain as much reserve capacity or go out and purchase at a high price. So it helps in that respect. And also it rewards people that are careful with this, and then it charges the people that aren't careful. So if you've got someone that just doesn't care about their bill and they just keep watering their yard or cooling their house, then that charge goes to that person, and it doesn't necessarily always get distributed to the other people. So there's a couple of effects that Dee Dee was talking about that kind of bring up beyond that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, thanks, Reed. So last slide, and then I'll transition to Jonathan here. We did some benchmarking to look across Texas to what other utilities do. There's more of this in the appendix, but so there are some pilot programs in Texas, small scale. These are optional programs. Nobody in Texas has mandated time of use. No utility has mandated it, but there are pilots out there, and what we've seen is that they've usually been paired with promotion to customers with distributed energy resources, so solar panels, electric vehicles. That's generally a combination that might work for a customer, so they've been promoted together. We have not seen any utilities that have just a specific time of use rate for low income customers. Generally, they're broad-based programs, and then customers, any customer can participate in the program. Again, there's more about this in the appendix, and we've got some examples out there of I think there's one in El Paso, and there was one, I can't remember the other utility, but you can see more on that. So with that, I'm going to turn it.
Wait just a second. We got a question online from Dr. Cantu. Go ahead, Dr. Cantu.
Thank you, Reed. It was from the last couple of slides. Or I'm still trying to understand, and thank you very much for delineating the differences with the thermostats. So I'm thinking of individuals with the outside thermostat. That's a smart thermostat. Does CPS have the ability to adjust electrical use through the smart thermostat, or is it just providing you information about the demand or the use of electricity in that household?
Okay, if you are, if you have a Nest meter,
No. The outside. I think that was what we
that's
just.
a meter, that's not a thermostat. That's a meter.
Okay, smart meter, right. I'm talking about the smart meters.
Okay, yeah, smart meter.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So a
What's your
smart
question?
meter that you have connected to a home may not have HVAC. Does CPS have the ability through that smart meter to understand what the current usage is and then adjust accordingly?
I mean, the short answer is no. I mean, we don't change anybody's usage through a smart meter.
It's just the information that's coming to you about the usage, correct?
It's recording the usage in the home. That's right.
Okay, thank you. I just want to be sure I had that straight in my head. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
So we have one more.
Okay, go ahead.
Two quick questions.
Yeah.
We can collectively stop sweating, I suppose, by Monday, once the legislature goes out of session for at least 2 years. But were there any bills that seemed to gain any traction this session affecting time of use, good or bad? And then secondly, in terms of the data, for instance, the 80-20 breakdown in terms of shiftability, is that internal data or is that utility sector-wide from other utilities? Is that a standard or is it Sunbelt cities? Where do those numbers come from?
Yeah, so that is our data, and it's based on load research that we've done internally. And it's going to be different based on climate, different areas of the country. On the legislation, I don't know the answer directly to that. Maybe someone from our government relations teams can help. I'm not aware of anything that on time of use that came through, but they would know the complete answer, and we'll see if we can get an answer in the meeting for you on that.
Just a quick.
It's Kathy. If you can see me and hear me, you are correct. There are no bills that have addressed time of use per se. What we have been seeing a lot this session has been discussions on generation, trying to make sure that there's enough megawatts on the grid to make sure that we have the type of reliability and capacity of generation that we want. Most of those discussions have been around fuel choice, whether it's dispatchable, if you will, like on demand, or if it's about renewables. So to Rick, you answered that question correctly. We've not seen anything on time of use, but there have been plenty of other energy bills that are still working their way through.
Just a quick comment. Programmable thermostat doesn't do any good if someone's home all day. I have programmable on something, but it's always someone there, so it doesn't do any good to have it turn off 15 minutes after I leave to go to work, because I don't, and turn on 15 minutes before I come back. Then, so anyway, that's during the school season. But then when school season out, low income, probably going to be at home. So it's going to be an all day usage. So in certain situations, even programmable stuff is going to be really tough.
Yeah, fair point.
Do you want me to do the other one?
Well, hello, everyone. Good afternoon again. I'm Jonathan Tijerina, and I have, as a reminder, I lead our programs, products, business development, and risk team. So happy to be back with you this afternoon. I'm going to be talking to you about some work that we've been doing around benchmarking with other utilities around possible payment programs that might be available that hit on the triangle that we've been referencing throughout today's conversation. And so what I wanted to talk about today was prepay. And prepay, you should have all this on your slide, so I'll try not to read it word by word, but in the short form, prepay is just another form of payment option that's available for the customer to interact with the utility. This isn't rocket science, right? So like prepay has been around for many years. It's new to the utility business in particular, but prepay basically is what it sounds like. You are putting in dollars to buy credits or to buy usage, in our case, ahead of schedule. So instead of right now, the traditional format being you consume your energy, end of the month, we send you a bill. Here, you're now empowering the customer to put in money ahead of time. And for that, they're actually allocated the appropriate amount of KWH in particular, around what their payment would be associated to. So another way of thinking about it is like an old cell phone, right? There's not an old cell phone. There are cell phone plans right now where you do prepay. You pay $30 at the beginning of the month. That gets you X amount of minutes throughout your month. And as you are working towards your end of usage of that, you can rather put more money into the account, or you can choose not to use it for the rest of the month because you don't have you haven't put that payment into it ahead of time. I have some facts here that are sourced that I want to reference. A couple of things that we've started to see from a utility perspective. 40% of customers that have participated are LMI customers, which if you think about it is kind of an interesting stat, right? Because what this does, again, as a reminder, is it allows you to prepay, put in the dollars ahead of time, and actually give you an idea around what your consumption will be for the month. This also leads to potential energy savings, right? Because now you're working towards a target or an allocated amount that you currently have, whereas the current structure is, hey, you'll see what you get at the end of the month, and then you're on the hook for that payment. The other thing that's of interest is the savings part of it, right? So behaviorally, this is an interesting program that we're fascinated with, because again, you're now putting the control at 100%, really, if you think about it, on the consumer, right? Because from a behavioral standpoint, now you have given them an incentive to stay within their usage pattern of whatever they prepaid for, and they would track that. And so the key things to this and making it work is that it has to have a lot of signals and communications to the customer. You're talking about the ability to ping people and provide them updates and information around where their usage is, how it's being, where they're tracking towards their structure, or how much they've used and how much they're left in their balance or in their queue. In particular, though, what's also of interest to this is that it does have a lot of customer benefits. And what it does also is it eliminates some of the needs for some of the administrative stuff that goes into the traditional practice, because again, you're getting actually prepaid for that consumption. And so another kind of analogy will be, it's like how we pay for gas right now in our vehicles, right? You don't get to use your vehicle all month and then pay at the end of the month for your gas. You actually pay for it ahead of time. So if you think about it from that perspective, that behavior or education or empowering of the data to the consumer gives them some more flexibility or thoughtfulness around how they'll use their energy usage. I want to talk about some of the benefits. So in addition to it being new, right, that new is always kind of fun. You're talking about a lot of payment flexibility here, because there is obviously the opportunity to pay as you go in a prepay model. There's the opportunity for you to ramp up and ramp down based off of certain behaviors or usage patterns that you would start to track throughout your year. Like, for example, your usage tends to be lower when school's in session and your household isn't quite as full. Your comparison, sir, as you mentioned earlier, about now it's summertime, everyone's back at home. Yeah, your usage is probably going to be a little higher, but if there's a signal that you can send, it's just another behavioral tool or educational tool to help them manage their energy usage. The elimination of deposits or possible credit check is also something to highlight. Currently, right now, when you're a new customer, right, we go through a process of validating and tracking to see how or not tracking, but we are validating their ability to be a good customer in essence. Well, with a prepay model, you eliminate the need for certain deposits, right? Because you've already paid in advance for what you're going to use out of the gate. So again, just from an experience standpoint, from a customer standpoint, there's just different options and different benefits that would come to them. From a utility perspective, again, I talked about the energy efficiency impacts that was sourced from one of our vendors, anywhere from 5 to 14%. And again, it's based off of that behavioral educational component. You have the advantage of leveraging the infrastructure to manage that. So a lot of conversations around the smart meter, which is the meter can outside your home, which actually powers the home, versus the thermostat, which is inside your home. What the smart meters do allow you to do is to allow for that two-way communication around the data. And we're going to talk a little bit more here in a little bit around the data that's already available for consumers right now if they log into their accounts. But again, it's just an increased engagement with the customer because again, you're working through a series of steps throughout the month based off of their usage levels. And so I think I got a question here inside the room, so I'll stop and see if we got a question.
Yes, sir. I'm thinking about that unusually high and unusually long heat spell we had last summer.
Sure.
Let's say toward the end of July. What kind of data were y'all able to extract from that in terms of how some of the prepaid customers might have changed their behavior because of, even if you had 10 or 15 years worth of data on your personal usage, you couldn't have based your expectation for last July on previous Julys. Were people recharging a lot in the last week? And what about customers who might not have been able to?
Yeah, great question. So to be clear, this is not a program that we currently have available in San Antonio. This is a program that we're benchmarking at other utilities in other cities because we're seeing a lot of traction. And we think this is something that we could accomplish in the path with the technology evolution that we've been talking about the last couple of months with you all as well. So right now, we're very much in our due diligence phase of confirming just what the change management process will look like, not only for our customer, but also what it would be for back office administrative change. Right, because you are talking also with more engagement, which is always good, also means more engagement, which means there's more administrative resources that are associated to that program. Okay.
We have a couple of questions online. We got Anaqua first and then Dr. Cantu. Go ahead, Anaqua.
Hi, for the prepay, no deposits. Did I see it correctly? It's only for people with social security numbers?
Yeah, so that is in there. So from a benchmarking standpoint, that is a prerequisite that we've seen. What I would tell you is that for us, none of this is final, right? So for us, we're going to go and examine what's the best program for our customers based off of what we're trying to accomplish. But you are correct. One of the industry standards for this is that if they submit their social security number, that all of a sudden they can get a deposit waived or any administrative costs. But again, for us, we would design the program that makes the most sense for our community.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Sure.
Dr. Cantu.
Also a clarification question. So the prepay would be on a monthly basis? So a customer would prepay a certain amount each month? Is that how I understand it or no?
Great question. I think we're open to either, right? So it could be month to month, or it could be maybe you're buying a block of time or for a block period. What's more common is month to month.
Yeah, I'd be really interested in seeing what other cities and the feedback for that. I'm a bit concerned because of just what I know in the community, and there are people that will not have a bank account because you have to leave a certain amount of money in the bank, and I'm just concerned that people would shy away from that because I'm going to pay for something where I might not necessarily have that in my budget if I'm paycheck to paycheck or less than paycheck to paycheck. So really interested in seeing how other cities are handling it. So if you do have that information, I'd be glad if you could share that with us.
Sure, we'll see what we can share, Dr. Cantu. What I will say though is, hey, I think it's a good reminder for all of us. There is no one catch-all program for all customers, right? Our job is to figure out how we can offer optionality, right, that makes sense for the various segments of our community that we have. And this is just another option that we would want to offer if we're able to build out the program.
Yeah, also, Jonathan, thank you, Dr. Kent. Jonathan, you need to explain, if you didn't, real clearly that just because if you use more than you paid for, you don't get that more for free.
That's correct. Yeah.
So let's go through that too.
Yes, sir. Great question, Chair Williams. That is correct. So let's be clear. If I were to buy 1,000 kWh, right, at the X price, once I hit that 1,001, there's a gap. Right. So yes, it would send signals to that customer where they owe new money. They got to recharge their card, if you will, if you want to use that as an analogy, or risk the potential, right, depending on the various program for shut off. which is different than maybe the current process, right? Where you have the ability to get an extensions, get not waivers, but get extensions, work with us on payment plans. This is a different program, right? Because this puts a lot of responsibility now on that consumer. So to Chair Williams and Dr. Cantu's comment, right, you got to be careful that from a customer perspective, that they're as educated as possible to understand that there is no going over. Going over actually means shutting it off.
Well, I'd seen a program somewhere, maybe I'm wrong, that if you go over, then there's adjustment in the next year. Is that not, that's not available here?
Not for prepay. That's probably more along the lines of having a flat bill.
Okay.
Right.
That's the flat bill.
That's the flat bill.
Okay.
Correct.
So prepay, you're right on the edge.
You're right on the edge.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
right. And I think as we think about energy efficiency in particular, from a behavioral standpoint, that is a strong signal to change your behavior throughout the month, right? So again, putting it on the customer to have to doing and manage that, but that is a benefit that comes out of the program. Al?
Is that what I'm comparing it to lock it in? It's similar to a credit card versus a debit card.
Yeah, I guess that's another way of maybe looking at it. Yeah,
mean,
because a
once
debit
you
card
run
is
the
coming
money-
out of your bank instantly, whereas a credit card is you're buying just credits for the future, right? I tend to think of it more of, hey, the cell phone industry has had a lot of success with this model, right? You go and prepay for a phone, you can get them at a very convenient location. You know how many minutes you have for the month, and when your minutes are gone, your phone stops working. It's a lot like that. Yeah. Yes.
I do have a question on the line.
Okay, we'll go.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the cell phone analogy, like Cricket and others, they don't require deposits, there's no contracts. You pay for only what you use. So it tends to be cheaper, and I think that's the main draw for people. Is there any incentive for people getting cheaper energy, like a cheaper rate? Is there anything built in? Is it the same rate that we're all paying? Because I do see that the piece missing here for the cell phone analogy is that at the end of the day, the cell phone per minute is cheaper than a full plan with Wi-Fi and hotspot and all of that. So just wondering if that's something that's factored in also. An incentive like cheaper energy.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think that's what the analogy breaks down, because we're not talking about debundling the offering, right? What we're really talking about is just prepaying for the consumption that you think you're going to use for the month. So yeah, maybe not the perfect analogy, but at the root of it, that's probably the difference.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Okay. Go ahead, Peter.
One more point of clarification. So let's say it's, the 25th of the month, and as a customer, I guessed wrong, or there's a heat wave, or both, and I just don't have the cash to come up with recharging the account until the first of the month. But it's 107 for the forecast for the next few days, and I have a poorly insulated house.
Yeah.
It sounds like the strong signal you're talking about can either go in two directions. Either there is a substantial increase in the new kilowatt hour price once you hit your 1,001 kilowatt hours usage, or you get cut off within a day or two. And it seems like getting cut off is problematic, and that's another way where the cell phone analogy might fall apart here.
Yeah. Well, it definitely falls apart because of the experience, right? You are impacted. Now, like we're going to figure this out. In that specific scenario, we won't cut anybody off, at 101 plus, regardless of programs that they're in. There's a safety mechanism for it. The other thing is, and she's coming to my left, and I'll just let her speak to it because I don't want to take her away her talking point.
Hi, thank you so much, Jonathan. I appreciate it. For those of you that don't know me, my name is KJ Fetter. I'm the Vice President of Community Engagement and Corporate Responsibility. And Drew and I are very passionate about this program. We shopped it around to some of our partners, COPS Metro in particular, a couple years ago, and they really saw this as a great opportunity for our low to moderate income customers. We could, get really creative with the types of assistance that we ask for and that we get from our community partners if we had a program like this. And the other thing is a lot of the people in our community get paid weekly and even daily, and they really struggle to budget for a full month of electricity. And so if we were able to bring this program on, we could budget, we could help them to set up weekly payments, daily payments, right? And I think that it's a great tool for that particular type of customer. There are a lot of questions, that's why I love this conversation about how we can help them through assistance programs when we flip the switch like that and make it look different. But the partners that we've talked to are interested in it as well. And they've said, hey, that'd be a great program. And I bet we could, help them even more, in smaller increments. So just an idea there too.
Yeah, thanks, KJ. And maybe just to sum that up, the root of everything at the end of the day is we want to make sure we also have the right assistance programs when customers are in need, right? So it wouldn't change. We would still offer the same programs and try to have as much of the same experience. Yes, sir.
So I have a question. In terms of the prepay concept, is there a possibility of creating a program that would allocate funding to assist indigent customers? For example, if as a ratepayer, let's say you've had a history of paying in advance and you have a $5,000 credit on your account because you pay regardless a certain amount, but you want to impact a community. You want to impact District 2 as an example, and you want the money to be allocated. Is there a way that they can have a prepay provision that allows folks that have a lot of residual money in their accounts that they would have to could go 2 or 3 years without paying a utility bill based on the accrual of funds that they have? So is there a prepay? And I know you have REAP, but REAP is not this kind of program. It just seems to me that with a program like this, it gives you a lot more opportunity to really impact the customer that you'd like to see in a specific segment of the community.
Absolutely. We can do that now through our Energy Angels program. And if we were to switch to prepay, we could just design an opportunity to make that type of donation through Energy Angels.
Maybe talk about Energy
So,
Angels.
yeah, absolutely. So Energy Angels is a program that lets customers give a gift of energy to another customer. So it isn't your traditional donation through REAP. It's your opportunity to donate to anyone that's at any income level, right? So I could say, hey, I want to pay my mom's electricity bill. I want to put some money aside for District 2 resident, right? And we can track that, where that money is spent immediately. We can do that now. And so if we switch to prepay, there's definitely an opportunity to change that program so that we can accept prepay payments as well.
So is right here, prepaid funds, are they going to be handled like an escrow account?
Get a microphone. They can't or turn it on.
It is on.
Oh, okay.
It's got a green light.
I just couldn't hear you.
I guess.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
My question?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Are those funds, prepaid funds, going to be, how are they handled internally? Like an escrow account? Are you guys going to be reinvesting the money somewhere?
I'm going to be perfectly honest. I don't know the answer. I think it's a receivable, right? So it would go through the normal. Let me rephrase it. So one of the benefits for the utility is that you get the money up front. Right, so it's still going through as an account receivable, and so it would go through that normal pattern. Where I think the questions to be answered is, okay, so if there's a running balance, like for example, what Mr. Edwards mentioned, right? If there's a running balance left on that account, what happens to those dollars and how are they accrued and so on?
Well, actually, the bookkeeping for it is it's an unearned revenue, and so as we earn it, we bleed it into revenue.
Yeah, but I think where she's going though also is there is a possibility, right, where they never actually earn it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they don't use it all,
yeah,
it would have to be refundable, I assume, because it's an unearned income. Okay,
Right, but until it's refundable, is it sitting in an interest-bearing?
Well, I guess if you looked at the whole books, we'd have to talk to the accountants, but the whole books, it would be an increase in cash, but it would be also an offsetting liability.
Correct. Yeah, so TBD is probably the final answer.
Be a pretty quick
Yeah.
in and out, but in their investment, they'll look at the total cash position. So to the extent that this, I guess, increased cash, then they could short-term invest it. But it is got to be, it is a liability of the company until they provide the power.
Correct.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, Andy.
Say you do this prepaid program and someone runs out of money and electricity is cut off. Is there a fee for reinstating?
No, there usually isn't, because you've actually eliminated that with the prepay.
Just wondering.
Yeah, no, great question.
Okay, let's remember, we don't have this program yet, but it's something we'll want to probably query y'all on. Go ahead, Al.
Well, the program wasn't available several years ago, but when I started to go from paper bill to online, I found myself paying my CPS bill twice, and in 1 month, it'd be double payment. It just showed up as a credit. So all we did was just prepay for next month. And then I know once upon a time I tried to prepay for my mother-in-law, and
you couldn't?
I couldn't.
That's right.
But then with this Angel program, they did, and I was able to just go ahead and just pay for hers. So regardless of what we call it, it is available right now. And then we have been talking a lot about behavioral change, and that's going to come about through education. And it's the carrot and the stick, whichever form of education you want to use. But CPS right now on their account, you have the ability to source your exact use per month, per week, per day. And it also gives you a comparison to what your neighbor's using.
Yep.
So could CPS turn around, and for those of us that would sign up for something like that, just you all send us a report, a condensed report. This is where you were today, or this is where you were last week.
Sure.
With your neighbors.
It's actually a perfect segue to the next slides. If we're,
we got one more question. Dr. Cantu's got a question again.
Thank you, Reed. Just clarification. So if a customer prepays and it's a hot day, as I think an example was, and they go over their prepayment, is electricity discontinued or cut off for the remainder of the month, and or not, and it just goes over to the next prepay?
Yeah, it most likely, Dr. Cantu, it goes to the next prepay segment, right? So we would follow the same rules that we currently have for our, the T's and C's that we currently have for, continuous hot weather days.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, we're going to back up here. Didn't see it come in. We missed Miriam. Miriam.
Hi, I think this might be similar to what Dr. Cantu just asked, but using your cell phone analogy, is the extra that people might pay sort of treated like rollover minutes that then go to the next month? And second part of that question being, is there any concern that people might see, oh, I have a lot more energy left towards the end of the month than I thought I had, so I'll just crank my AC down for a few days because I already paid for it, so I might as well use it. Is that?
Yeah. So great question. And yes, I'm sure it will come up. That's the reality of consumer behavior, right? So definitely, I think that is something that we would have to continue to educate people on nonstop.
Okay, I don't see anything else here. I don't have anything else online. Go ahead.
Thank you. All right, so transitioning now to public awareness and kind of the things that we do now, and to tie back to Al's question here. First thing I want to talk about, public awareness. So we're going into summer, right? You've heard for many months now, the 4 biggest months of the year for consumption is June, July, August, September. Our campaign is up and running, and we'll start continuing with the education around the multiple activities that we do to promote awareness around energy usage during the summer peak. It will not be uncommon for you to see rather these same ads or very similar ads running on multiple channels, multiple platforms, right? So outdoor billboards, inserts, bill inserts, newspapers, et cetera. But all of this is to promote the education and awareness around usage during the summer and to help reduce the peak during the peak times of the 4 months that we track this the most. The other thing that, this recently won a couple of awards here locally and has been recognized as a very effective program that we've had. Congrats to our corporate communications team for implementing this, but it's the green, yellow, orange, red alerts. This is different, but somewhat similar to what ERCOT does for their master consumption right from the grid. This is awareness that we're promoting to customers to promote the outreach and education around different expectations around high usage days throughout the summer. So you can see, and I know you guys have the printouts, so you can see the print a lot better, but we actually give certain tips and things to rather avoid or to maybe think about doing differently should you go through the various stages. And so, for example, in the summer, on a normal activity day, let's say 95, because that's low, we would have a green day, right? Like that's just an everyday run the business, run the consumption. On a yellow day, that's when we're starting to raise awareness that, hey, there's some sensitivity to how much usage we'll start using within the system. And it's a signal that we will use also to think about how we also trigger our demand and response programs, which are the programs we talked about that are the summer programs to help reduce usage during summer peak. These are those programmable thermostats that we have a relationship with. These are the large commercial customers potentially that are reducing their usage, or even in some cases like stopping production. Realistically, if you get to orange and red, we're talking about different stuff, and there'll be so much more communication that comes out. But this was a simple way to, again, tying back to behavioral change as a way to communicate the very levels of our usage and our performance during the summer. And I should mention, everything is available English and Spanish, so you see this in both languages. This is actually really cool, because I bet most people don't even know this is something we have right now. So through the My Energy portal, if you log in to manage my account on cpsenergy.com, you actually have this information available to you right now. There is a portal that you go into once you log in to manage my account that takes you to your energy portal. It's called My Energy portal. And at the My Energy portal, you have access to your usage on a daily basis. And the information goes further than that. You can see your usage by day over the last 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and think up to a year. You can go back and pull your bills for the last year. There's this great, does this work? No, okay. There's this great bar chart that actually shows you your usage by day. And so you then, as the consumer, can start making some educational awareness tips for yourself about, okay, what did I do that day that I use that much more kWh than the day after? In particular, maybe this is a bad example, but this is by month. So no surprise, right? June, July, August, September, the highest bills of the year, because that's when the highest usages happen. But again, this is information that's available to every customer right now that has a smart meter. And I think we're at 99% smart meters employed throughout the whole city. There's a handout in your packet that you should have that gives you some more information and where you can see this in more detail. But again, this is information that customers have already right now. Additionally, I should also mention, it does also give you the opportunity to do a home energy analysis where you can actually go in there and answer some real simple questions, and it basically spits out recommendations for energy saving measures you can take as the consumer or the home or multifamily unit, whatever it is. This is universal to anyone that has a smart meter. The entry point or the potential barrier is that they just have to sign up for Manage My Account, right? Which requires, a couple of questions to be answered, but it's accessible on our website 24/7. The next thing,
I'm sorry, just on that last comment you made, so just to be sure I understand. So when talking to people in the community, have a smart meter, you would be able to access it, but you have to sign up on the website for Manage My Account. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, and once they do that, then they have access to this information.
That is correct.
So it would be helpful to educate people on that they probably do have it, to find out if they do have this Manage My Account. If they have signed up for it, I should say.
That's correct, Dr. Cantu.
Do we know how many people that have smart meters are also signed up for Manage My Account?
Yeah, the question is how many are signed up to manage my account? Is it 600,000? It's about 700,000 customers that are signed up, Dr. Cantu. I don't have the numbers as to how many are actually using it, but we've had quite a bit of campaigns over the last couple of years to raise awareness. And many times when they call into the call center, we make that as a recommendation, like, hey, you know, there's an opportunity for you to have this data available to you.
And how many smart meters are in San Antonio?
Over 1 million.
Okay, and we get about 600, close to 700,000 that at least have access to Manage My Account. So there's quite a gap.
Dr. Cantu, it's 1.3 million meters, but so I want to say if you have gas and electric, you have two different meters. It's not households, but we do have about 700,000 customers that are registered on Manage My Account. And that's we tend to be the top in the industry for customers enrolled online. And at the same time, we also have close to, I think, 65% of our customers get an e-bill, and they get it emailed directly to them. That's also top in the industry. Most utilities don't see that benefit. So the good news is when you're talking out in the community, most people already sign up for this.
Right.
It's just a matter of help getting more awareness out there. And so that's one reason why we wanted to put this in front of y'all.
Okay, we got a question here in the room. Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, the daily usage information, is that available for our daily natural gas usage as well, or just electricity?
If the gas meter has the device to communicate to the smart meter, yes, it's both electric and gas.
Great, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I don't see anything else here. I got nothing else on the.
Great.
So go ahead.
Thank you, sir. All right, so the next program is the High Bill Alert program. Again, this is already in flight. This is us sending communications to the customer regarding usage patterns, right? So here you'll see, you know, a sample of the communication that they'll get around their energy, their usage, and we're able to send these out to our consumers, our customers. And the stat here is that since 2020, we've enrolled about 2,300 people. So this is an option where you sign up to get notifications for high bill alerts. You do this two ways, but primarily it's through the Manage My Account portal, right? Once you're signed up, you go through it. There should be the option, right? Is it strictly 100% call? Oh. Sorry, sound corrected. I thought I knew that one, so my bad. So correct me. This is 100% call into the call center and let them know that you want to have the notification. So I imagine as we go through the ERP transformation, this experience will only improve itself as well, right? The ability just to get more frequent communications and information around their usage. The last one is a program also through summertime. It's the peak time alerts. This is a step program where we too also send communications out to customers. This usually correlates with the green, yellow, orange, red alerts. We'll send the communication the day before. Consumers, or I keep saying consumers, customers will know that we're going to a yellow day for the next day coming up, and they have the opportunity then to compete amongst their neighbors for, you know, in a comparison of how their usage compared to someone else's. So again, another communication that just goes out to customers. In particular, what's to highlight of this program also is that this is a program that is focused on customers who currently are not on any type of smart thermostat program with us or any type of demand response program as a whole. So these are customers that are not actively participating in a STEP program for demand response, and we're able to communicate to them. And this is strictly 100% behavioral change that they do based off the alert that we sent them. And I might see a question, so I'll stop right there.
No, I don't. Oh, Peter's got one. Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you for the presentation, Jonathan. My question is about the cost-of-value weatherization program, and the question that came up at the recent MUC meeting where Councilman Courage asked about, and has said it before, that he would like to see it to be mandatory for if they enter the program that they would automatically go into demand response. I personally agree with that. I wanted to get your feedback on the pros and cons of that and how you could see that being acceptable.
One thing
benefits.
I've gotten clarified, thanks, Peter. One thing I've gotten clarified since we started this conversation about a year ago is we actually do make that a option for the customer when we do the program. So right now it's an option. And obviously the primary driver is, do they have an AC unit or not, right? So central AC or not. Look, I think anytime you force programs on people, you run the risk. There's risk and reward to everything. For us, I think it's more about how do we ensure that we are securing the footprint of the house as much as possible through our weatherization program, and then ideally work that customer through as many of our additional programs that we have, and that includes getting them onto a smart thermostat program. So for me, it's about the customer journey from entry to exit, right? Because if we, in the ideal situation, right, you have the opportunity to seal up that home as much as possible so that there's no energy wastage. And then from there, it's about the continuous education of getting them through our various programs. So that's my initial thoughts, Peter. But I was happy to find out that we do offer the thermostat as a program or an offering when we're in the home, and we'll continue to do that.
Okay.
I've heard mentioned about, if I could just follow up on that.
Yeah, sure.
The opting in, and I don't know if you said that, I couldn't quite hear the opting in and then having that as the option to opt out. So starting with the opt-in option, if you don't make it a mandated scenario.
Yeah.
Is that?
I don't have an answer right now, Peter. We'll look into it. Most of our programs right now require opt-in versus opt-out. So,
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Alan.
Mandatory programs have always been, have bad connotations. The different homeowner association meetings that I've gone to, when we say the CPS is going to mandate you to do something, it's always wrong. And then right away, nobody wants to sign up for it because of the fact that right now they think that, well, they're going to control my air conditioning. They're going to turn off this, they're going to turn off that. And they don't. I tell them, yes, they will tell you that they're going to reset your thermostat. But if you go up there and you change the thermostat, that's it. You're on your own again. It's not a hard line like that. It's easy to get out of it. Sometimes I'm in it for it's a 2-hour program or a 3-hour program. And on hour 2, I said, I can't take it no more. I go back and reset mine and that's it. It's done. But I agree with Jonathan and the different meetings that I've been to. I've been talked to in a very direct way that no, do not demand anything. That's the way.
Okay.
It's a quick way to lose them.
More questions, more statements, Peter? Go ahead. Sure, respond back.
Because it is a program where there is an investment that's being made, and much like when we talk about any type of our programs, that's that reciprocity that's involved with that, the give and the take between the partners. So that's my perspective.
Thank you. Anybody else here? Anybody online? No, we got one more slide. Come on back up.
That's right. So actually, last slide, I think I'll just go ahead and finish it out for Rick, so he don't have to make the long walk back.
All right, Rick. Thank you.
This is really more of just a leave behind, right? As a reminder of our technology current situation and what the next really 12 plus months look like, right? So not much to say here, more as a leave behind, as a reminder, right? A lot of this is also contingent on the future of our ERP transformation, right? So that's the system replacements that we'll be going under over the next couple of years that ultimately, hopefully will allow us to enable some of these additional programs and services. So stop there.
Okay, this is an important slide. I know there's going to be a lot of questions on this. I see. Okay, go ahead.
So let's be clear on the timeline. So last time we talked about this, when you started adding up, you have to acquire a system, you have to install a system, then you have to start programming the system to do things like time of use. Last time we discussed it, when you add all those things up, we were looking 3 to 5 years for anything to be implemented. Is that still the same?
It's still accurate. Yes,
okay. So that's, and we'll talk about it more later, but when we start suggesting what we need to do in the future, I say we sort of ignore this to the extent that if we think time of use needs to be in place, we still recommend it, even though it can't be implemented for 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, this slide needs to stretch out a little bit because I don't see, I'm trying to read it, there's a lot on it. Do we have time of use on this slide anywhere?
Yeah, it's actually right there in the 12 plus month.
What's,
and Evan's gonna come up here.
Where's
Yeah.
the?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Evan O'Mahony. I'm responsible for our information technology organization. So we have time of use in a couple of different places here. In the middle section, the first bullet, 12 plus months. So we do have the ability to introduce residential time of use on our current system, which we will be replacing over the next 3 to 5 years. And we can do that in, 12 plus months. I would say it's probably closer to 24 to actually build that on our legacy system. The post-technology transformation are the bullets that you see there are really the things that would wait for the full deployment, to your point, of our future technology solution, which would be 48 to 60 plus months from where we are today.
I guess I got something confused. I thought you said you already had some commercial customers on time of use billing.
So we have a very small commercial time of use pilot.
Oh, it's a pilot. Okay.
Correct. And based on what we learned from that pilot, our current system would not allow us to scale to full commercial deployment.
That's important. Okay, go ahead. Thank you. Go ahead.
So I'd suggest that you update this slide to make that real clear, because actually that's longer than I heard last time. You just said for that post-technology transformation, you just said 48 to 60 months. So you're talking 4 to 6 years for that. This slide needs to be clear to that.
We can add those
because
details.
that's important. And people don't, they look at this and you guys say a few things and want to rush off, and that's a long ways away.
So how can you do residential time of use under our existing system? So you'll spend money reprogramming our existing system, then you'll put a new system in right after you've spent money. Is that kind of what you're thinking about?
That is correct. So that's where we would look at the recommendations that come from this team, perform some analysis, and be able to come back and say, as we think about this technology roadmap, when would we be able to deliver those particular?
So you say 12 plus, how big is the plus?
I would say probably 12 to 36 months is the middle. And
there's a difference in a year and 3 years.
Sure. This is the clarity that we can provide. A lot of the nuance will come based on the requirements that we did, right? So actually taking the feedback and translating it to the technical work that has to occur.
Gonna be out there a while. Okay, Peter, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify, when you said you had a pilot for commercial and you ran it and saw that you couldn't scale it up. So were you saying that you couldn't do that for the residential, to run some type of pilot before we ramp?
We certainly could do a residential pilot on our current system.
Thank you.
I see nothing in here. Oh, Michael, sorry.
And we can talk about it more later, but I just want to say now, I think one of our recommendations needs to be something along the line up to the board to find a way to accelerate that post-technology transformation. Clearly with resources, you can, move those timelines a little bit.
Okay, don't see anything in here, anything online? Take a break.
All right.
Tired? Really? Just couldn't sleep, or you had a lot going on? Yeah. Yeah. I get up at the same time. I really have to make sure that I stall. Those work. Yeah.
Okay, let's start getting back to our seats. Okay, let's give this a try. We, okay. I went back to the bylaws, and it's important to keep looking at this as to what our charge really is. And so Section 2, Article 1 is probably one of the most important sections in the whole bylaws. And the operative words that are very important is to provide, and nobody laugh at this, thoughtful input and perspectives, okay? I'm going to assume we're all thoughtful here. And we have been. But in order to, and again, they gave us 4 areas here: rate structure, rate design, proposed rate increases, and generation planning. Well, we've been through all of these in the last 2 years. And frankly, I want to just take this minute to thank everybody for staying with this, okay, that has. Y'all are troopers, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I also appreciate the fact that we're staying over another month or so. I know you didn't sign on for this, but the thought of starting this thing over right now with all new people is that's a chilling thought. So we're not going to have to do that. We got people that know what they're doing, and I appreciate it. Now, this rate structure is a tough one. I'm not sure there's any exactly right answers. There is always been a hope that there'd be some kind of silver bullet that we could find that would solve all these problems. And I think what we've all seen by talking about the triangle is it's not single bullet, it's a combination of things you can do to help low-income people with their energy burden. To that point, I want to bring up and call everybody's attention to this attachment. It's a very, very well done document. It's got all the information in it that we requested on energy burden. And I can assure you that this will be a guiding a better work. Deanna and her group have done a great job on this. And I encourage you to spend a little time looking at it, looking at the census tracts, and where we are, where the people are we're trying to help, because it is about people. Also, early on, John Agatha and several other people clearly made it a point that was important. And there's another flyer in here that's very professionally done on how to read your bill. So I would also encourage you to do that. Jonathan talked about navigating the energy portal. Again, don't forget this one. Now, down to our charge. How do we best provide thoughtful input and perspectives to the board? That's our job. Not our job to make a decision. It's our job to give basically our opinion. So while we voted on some of the issues, some of the issues we haven't, but I see this more as we've got a microcosm, if you will, representative sample, whatever you want to call it, of our population. And I've continued to believe that a representation of the thought from this group would be meaningful and important to the board as they make decisions on this last step, which is rate design. To that point, we've started developing a series of questions. Each question will be, we'll have a lead in with the background, and then there'll be a question. This is the reason you're being asked the question. This is the question. We're at this point in today's meeting, we want to hear questions that you would like the board to get your opinion on. Okay? We'll take them down. We'll develop a question. After we've done it, you'll send them to me, work with me. Everybody's got my cell phone number. We'll get the questions in a format, and then we'll turn them over to the board and the legal department here to see if that's what they want. If they don't, they clearly have the right to make changes to the questions, but we've got to give them something to start with. I've asked that the questions be broken into 3 sections so that there's a logic to it. We've got the rate relief, the conservation, and the demand management section. So today I'd like to get opinions, and I'll need somebody fairly close, maybe, and you can sit here if you see people, or I'll keep my phone on and we'll get people on the list that's online. So the exercise we're looking at today is, and we might already have a question similar to yours, okay? Now, you never want to just put a questionnaire out to people without asking for their input. I mean, I just never found that to be very productive. And that's why we're doing this. We got a little time here to do it. We don't have to do it in 30 minutes, but I sure want to be out here by 6. So let's start with rate relief. And if somebody wants to chime in, what kind of questions would you like the group to answer on rate relief? And again, if you're not ready or prepared, because I don't mean to just spring this on you, but we got to start it somewhere. If you're not ready or prepared to say, you don't have to say it today or lose it. You can call me anytime. We'll try to get the kind of question on you want. So today, I'm just throwing it open under rate relief. What are the kinds of things, and we've all been through the presentation, what are the kinds of perspectives that we would like this group to provide the board? Anyone? I don't want to sound like Ferris Bueller up here. Okay, go ahead. Peter.
Read on the ADP potential scenarios that were shared with us that first session when we covered the bill relief. And I had asked if the board or the leadership would consider having the RAC to give recommendations specific to what we thought would be the best option to the board. And those were there were 3, and then there was one that had a variable, which was that Austin variable rate. So that's what and we're talking about even going forward, whether it's within this rate design or whenever to have the opportunity to chime in on that decision-making process.
I'm going to need you to elaborate on that a little more, Peter, for people that maybe have forgotten. So go ahead, talk a little more about the options and what you want to see there.
With the options being scenario 1, increasing the monthly discount, $8 to $16. That was one. With the resident, it gives you the residential impact, how much it'll cost us to do that, and then what the benefit would be. And the second would be to increase the number of customers assisted, and that would double the number that we currently do have in the ADP. And the third was a 6% energy burden for the first quintile. And we talked about the quintile, and it was very lively discussion about what that quintile encompasses. So we want to be sure we can revisit that. And I thank you for the information that was shared today about those census tracts and the energy burden. And we've seen some other versions of that, so that we can be more specific in which one of those would really have the greatest impact on those LMI customers and with the ADP. And in that last one, and I had asked about what the outcomes of the Austin program where they were providing a variable rate to their customers. So to get that also addressed before we can give a response. And I think it was a variable discount would assist those with inefficient homes, those who have more people in their home in the same, and that would be to add that variable discount to the 1614. It would be a flat fee of 1614 as a discount.
So you're proposing that we put 4 options on the question?
Yes, basically the 4 scenarios is those first 3, and then the 4th one has the variable, but getting those questions answered about the Austin outcomes, so we can better at least have information on how that has turned out for them.
Well, we have a question here, but it isn't quite worded that way. I'll work your stuff into it, and then I'll give you a call, and we'll see if we can make that work for you. There'll be 4 options plus obviously the null set, which is none. So there'll be 5 on that one. You'll just click one of those. Okay.
Just to make sure I understand what you're saying, I'm almost hearing that there may be multiple questions and not just options.
No. There's multiple questions, but in this question,
on his issue, there may be multiple questions. You could have a question of, should we increase the monthly discount? Another question would be, should we increase the number of people that get the assistance? Instead of just having to pick between those, it may be separate questions to say, should we do this? Should we do this? Should we do this?
We can make it in. Yeah. We can make it into 4 questions. Yeah. I mean, again, you don't want the survey so long people won't do it. But if you want to break that up, that's a legitimate point. We could break it up, and then people can say yes or no to each one of them. Yeah, that's easy. I don't think you have to necessarily pick one. That's a good point, Mike. I don't see any other comments on that question, but that's under the rate relief. Yeah. Do you have something else, Peter?
That's it, sir. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Is there any other things that we would like to talk about in the rate relief question? Is that going to pretty much?
I have one.
Yeah, just if you can put it in, and then go ahead, add a little bit. If you put it in so that we keep everybody going on this, and then Ann will let me know, and I'll put the queue in. Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't want to get ahead of anybody else. So I think one of the other options, or still to be answered, is what would a sliding scale look like? Is a sliding scale fee or a rate relief doable?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
Sure. I just, as a question, is it an option? I don't know. We meet further discussion of a sliding scale rate relief.
Sliding scale, and what does the scale slide off of?
Income.
Well,
just as a question.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I'm looking for an answer here.
Uh-huh. I know we discussed that previously, but anyway, you're asking for questions.
Yeah, no, I totally, I mean, if you want, we can make a 5th question out of that, or 6th question, honestly, where you're talking about relief on a step basis, I guess. Lawyer has a question here, a statement. I didn't understand it the first time. I'll let her just talk it.
Okay, on that last one, I can tell you that if we were to suggest a scale that is your rate set based on your income alone, that has a slim chance of being accepted in the state of Texas. Because how much you earn has nothing to do, remember when we talked about what you can consider the reasonableness standards? How much you earn has nothing to do with how much it costs to provide you power. Okay, so, and what we have to do is collect enough revenue to cover the costs of providing power to everyone. Any discount from one group has to be collected from the remainder of the groups. Okay, so I would suggest that in a community like San Antonio, where we know the volume of low to moderate income customers, the bulk of our customer base is going to be low to moderate income. So instead of, say, a city where 20% of the people would qualify for a discount and that discount amount would be collected from the remaining 80%, in San Antonio, that's going to be very difficult because the majority of our customers are going to qualify a discount that would then be collected by the minority of customers. That has a much less likelihood of passing a reasonableness standard. Now, if you tied it to something other than just income, I think that there's a greater chance of doing that. The other thing I wanted to explain, so that was my answer to Dr. I think it was Dr. Cantu's question. Peter, when you asked a question, you offered a couple of options. You said we could increase the monthly discount above the current $8-ish amount to a higher amount, increase the number of customers assisted by doubling the number that are being assisted. And what I would need to understand to give you guys a legal opinion on whether I think that that would stand up to challenge is how you want to fund that increase. So there's nothing wrong with the goal of increasing the number or increasing the total discount. What I would suggest, and what I suggested to Reed, is that I do that analysis right now, assuming that we continue to collect the amount the way we collect it now. So it would simply mean, for instance, your first example, if the total monthly discount goes up to, I'm making up numbers, to $12 instead of $8, look at what the resulting charge would be to the rest of the customers until you do, I think that still remains in that reasonable range. If we increase the customers assisted by the program, calculate what the new cost would be that goes to each customer. And again, tell you, does that stay in the reasonable band? So I just wanted to let you know, that's the approach I'll take in the analysis and make sure that lined up to your expectations.
Great. And Shanna, just to clarify that those are the scenarios that were presented to us. Those are the 4 options. So I'm basing it off, and it's good information there. So yes, I think getting more into the weeds of how we pay for those extra, if that first bill impact is 31 to 62 cents, how that factors into that particular class.
No, one more. The Austin tiered rates are now being reversed out from Austin. Sorry, the Austin tiered rates are now being reversed out by Austin and did not result in greater savings to lower income customers. I don't know whether that is causational or corollary. I'm just passing on the information. That's their first step. They did not see the results they expected to see from their tiered system.
Well, that's good feedback. Thank you, Shanna.
Okay, we've got a question online from Miriam.
Yes, I was curious, just as a follow-up, I heard we can't use just income unless it's coupled with something else. Can you share a little bit about what that might be? What would the low income be coupled with as a factor?
Well, let's be careful with this. Come on. But let's be careful. And this is a good question that you have because you weren't here when we had the discussion. Today, the cutoff point is 125% of the poverty level. Okay. Also, you have to meet one of 5 additional requirements. Okay. Under those requirements plus that 125, that's obviously passed muster with whether it is too much of a burden on the rest of the people in the residential class. As you relax constraints of one of those 5, which are like 60 years older, have a disability, use life-sustaining medical, have a preschool-age children or children in school under 18, or have an extenuating circumstance which can be waived by CPS or the city. Once you start raising that percentage over the poverty or reducing those constraints, you start moving into an area of judgment as how far and how far can you go before you have created a burden. If you remember when we did this, the reason that this can be justified is because they justify it on the basis that by doing this, the rest of the customers have a backside savings so that you don't have as many bad debt. Okay? So you got to justify it in that it's a benefit to the whole class. And it's just one of those things. You won't know whether it's 130, 135, or whether you take off the fact that you have to have a disability. You don't know because you won't know until you're challenged in court. And I'm not a lawyer. I didn't mean to speak, but that's general. That's the plain language stuff, okay? From just a guy that isn't certified to do anything. So hopefully that helps.
Yes, that's very helpful, and I apologize for the newbie questions.
Not at all. We all need review. Okay, we're still in the rate relief section. So one of the concerns I've had is, are there one of those 5 constraints that potentially needs to be removed or could be removed? It's not a constraint, it's an additional requirement. Constraint's the wrong word. It's an additional requirement. You can be below 125 of the poverty level, but if you don't have one of those, if you're not qualifying under one of those other deals, you don't get it. And clearly that's what keeps it from getting challenged too much, because you're saying these are very disadvantaged people economically, and they're challenged this other way. So it holds up. Anyone? Not seeing anything? Anything else any other question on rate relief that is burning a hole in somebody's pocket? Al?
Simple question. Remind me of all the acronyms that I have to deal with. Remind me what ADP stands for.
Yep. That is the affordability discount program, if I'm correct. I don't remember them either. I'm not good with acronyms. All right, still not seeing anything online, not seeing it in the room. We're going to move to energy conservation. All right. And as you all remember, this is really around the STEP program. Is there anything that people would like this group to give their educated opinion to the board on? Peter?
Would the board consider a targeted energy efficiency weatherization pilot program to complement STEP in collaboration with neighborhood and housing services and nonprofit resiliency hub?
We'll probably have to work on that question, Peter, and hone it in real specifically, because right now the questions are really general. It talks about the STEP programs come in, and we saw a really good presentation last time on how they've redesigned the Casa Verde program. They've added an assistance program to fix minor problems. You'll have to go back to that presentation. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but they've added a lot of stuff to do that. Programs, not really more money. So, the kind of questions that we were kind of thinking about are something like this: are sufficient steps being taken with the new programs to assist low-income residential customers conserve energy in their home? That could be the question. We can have an open-ended box in the end saying, what else would you suggest? Okay. Another kind of thing is, will low-income residents of multifamily facility participate in organization program? Will they recognize the benefit? Or is it a benefit for the owner of the apartment? And, you know, then you can things like, should you change the, should you change the program and require it to do more on the UCT more than one? Okay, we're not recovering all of our costs. And the argument there is, while we don't recover all of our costs in that program, we over recover, in the other programs. So we're looking at I can't remember, maybe a 1.4 or something like that, 1.4, meaning you'll return $1.43 for every dollar you spent. Those are the general kind of things that kind of came up in that discussion when I took my notes when y'all were asking questions. So energy conservation, talk to me. I'm feeling, yeah, Al.
I'd like to confirm that gas will remain an element that's a service that is available as part of the energy conservation program for the reduced use of electricity, of having to generate electricity.
Well, we can characterize the question, and I'll work with you directly, that saying, do you believe that gas should be a continued option to do what you're saying? And it's a yes or no. Yeah, and I think we can get a question like that. Okay, we got a gas question. Okay, Peter. Oh, I'm sorry, Mike. I think you, Mike.
But if I could read just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
The question. So that's my question. I could make it more general and for consideration. And then of course there could be more detail. There's quite a bit of detail there, and I have shared details and I have made those type of questions or recommendations to the board in our previous step approval process. So I'll work with you on that and see if we can find a common ground.
Just write the question down. Send me in a text or an email, and we'll talk about it. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Mike.
So it seems like what the obvious type of question would have to do with whether or not we think we're spending enough, too much, too little on the STEP program. So.
Okay. Write a question down, send it to me. Anybody online? Not seeing anything there. Anything here on energy conservation? Okay, we got a full dose of demand management, so that ought to be kind of fresh on our mind. This one's a tough one. I just don't, there's no way around it. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 questions on demand management, but I want to hear what y'all have. Go ahead. Yeah, Mike. Get the.
Thanks, Reed. So the prepaid program, what is the incentive for CPS customers to prepay their electric bill rather than pay for usage as they use at the end of every month? Could that be considered a question for the board? How do we incentivize?
The way we could say it is do you believe a prepaid program would be an advantage? And people can say yes or no. So we got to characterize it as a question, but I think you could put a pretty good, you want to put one together and text it to me? The kinds of things that I'd kind of thought about was the obvious question when CPS has got the ability to charge on time is, should it be used and implemented? Okay, I mean, that's a pretty general question. I mean, but you got to remember, we're providing overall general advice as opposed to specific design. And something like if time of use billing is implemented, is it beneficial to low income people? I mean, those are corollary questions because we need to think about it and figure out if that's right or not. I don't know. I don't know, but I go ahead, Dee Dee.
I'd ask, how do we help those customers who cannot shift their peak load?
Well,
would we eventually default to a time of use rate? I'd like to see the benefits of like defaulting eventually, not anytime soon. So before everybody gets crazy about that. Those would be a couple of my questions. Also,
you can elaborate a little more. I hadn't got it yet, Dee Dee. So
Okay.
What are you saying?
Well, I mean, there are, in terms of shifting load during peak times.
Okay.
I mean, there are customers who are not going to be able to, like renters and people that are retired and at home all day and who
Right.
typically have, a lower usage rate, right? So what do you do about those customers who are not able to shift that peak load? I'd also ask.
Well, wait. So we have to put that in a question.
In a question.
So, don't worry about it now, but I've got it down.
Yeah.
Just think about it, how you would put it in a question.
These are things that I think that we didn't really cover in this presentation, and that I think there was still a lot more information that we could have used. So maybe this should have been a question earlier in the presentation, but I've had some, time to think about it. And the other thing I've thought about is the outreach on time of use. Like it's got to be more than just an email and putting things on social media. I think that there needs to be more impactful outreach and education on time of use.
Okay. Well, we've got time for it right now. We have the people in the room. So why don't they talk about what do you do for people that can't shift their load and talk about the outreach. So anyone coming on up? Still don't have anything online? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, those are really good questions. I mean, I think part of that is program design. Some utilities have mandated time of use where you've got to go on time of use, and I think that could be challenging for customers who can't shift load. And so I think a program design question is do you make it mandatory, or do you give people the option to opt out of that, right? So if it doesn't work for me, can I get off of that rate and just be on a standard rate? So that's one possible path. The other path is to just say, hey, look, it's just an optional rate. I mean, you just start with that idea that this is an optional rate. If you think this would work for you, if you're willing to engage, if you think it works for the way that you live your life and so forth, then you can opt into the program. I think that might be another way to prevent some of the problems of customers who then get trapped on a rate that just doesn't work for them. So I think that's part of it. I think the other part about communication is what we were trying to get at, with the circle we had of all the different elements that it takes to be successful. I think part of it is visibility, but part of it is also the feedback. And that can be people talking to customers about, how you're doing on this rate. Is it the right rate for you? And then some pathway to like either make it work, or some utilities will give customers an option after a year. If this isn't the right rate for you, then there's a conversation about like, maybe moving you to a different rate. So, I mean, I think those are all really good questions. I think that's part of the hard work we'd have to do to really make it workable.
I think the hard question that you're asking, Dee Dee, is, if you've got incentives to load shift, does that really help low income people? I mean, that's the crux of it, and it might not. I mean, but that's going to be individual people's opinion on that. I mean, I don't know that there's any research or amount of study that we can do, that's kind of got to depend on you. Go ahead, Dee Dee. I'm sorry.
I'm just wondering, like, how much, how much time was spent looking at the utilities that have, variation in rate. They have like a time of use plus a inclining block rate, inclining block rate, like Los Angeles, who serves like, I don't know how many, a lot more than CPS Energy. Like, and I know that people don't like, in Texas, don't like to talk about California. Don't California like Texas. I agree. But they are doing a lot of good work in terms of education and outreach to help people opt in or eventually default to a time of a use rate. And that's what I'm getting to, is just like, like, where are we getting our data on, because there's very limited, like there's in this presentation.
Hi, Dee Dee. So I can talk about for us in the customer group. I've actually spent a lot of time specifically with Salt River Project because of their community base, as well as just kind of some of their system limitations. If you look at their bill, it almost looks exactly like our bill. They've actually had a time of use rate that they built in with really, really old school meters. And so for them, it's more of a cultural thing. And so when I've talked to them about how did they change behaviors, they were like, it was just instilled in us. Because if it gets hot, people don't want to pay more. So they don't have a lot of the kind of that old structure to talk through. Salt River Project, SRP in Arizona, because of their structure, their customer base, also their seasons are very similar to us. Size is very similar to us. I think another one, we spend a lot of time with different APPA, so different public power, SMUD, Sacramento utilities. The one thing, every time, whenever, from a customer perspective, when we spend time talking to them about what they see and kind of the customer feedback, they say the best thing they've been able to experience and to change behavior and also help their low-income customers, they always keep taking us back to prepaid and the experience that they've been able to see on prepay with their customers, the feedback that they have. They've talked about lessons learned that they've gone through to help to make it a better experience for your low-income customers. They also see the same experiences we do, and you'll see in your packet for our customers that have a high energy burden. Those customers are using closer to 1,400 kWh per month. So while the average is 1,100 for us here in our community, our low-income customers are using more energy. And a lot of that, what they found, and I think what we find is continue with home efficiencies, weatherization importance, as well as awareness, education on conservation. So the more we get that message out, also helps. But I just also wanted to add that perspective that as we think of low income, sometimes you're thinking of older homes, or you do have older, so the average age is between 50 to 55, and the income is between 20 to 25,000 for our customers that have the 6% or higher energy burden. So if those customers are at home all day long, to your point, how they shift their load, sometimes they don't have a choice, right? Because you have multiple people living inside the household at once, a less efficient home, and low income to make some of those enhancements. So it's just things to take into consideration, and some challenges that we found that when we talk to other utilities, so talking just to Austin up the street, or when we go to talk to San Diego or some of the other customer or other utilities, LADWP, they're part of our benchmarking company. They don't always have the same challenges that we see in terms of their communities. So when we talk about the community makeup, that's kind of what we're hearing specifically with time of use, prepaid, and even assistance programs.
Peter.
Deanna, if you can come back up, just heard you mention Sacramento Municipal. And can you confirm that in their pilot, when they rolled it out for the LMI, that after the year and they monitored the outcomes, that they reimbursed it back to them if they went over their previous amount of use from the previous year? Is Is that, can you confirm that was the way?
I can go back and confirm with that, because I think, from what I remember my conversation with Sacramento, they really used it to help, like it was like a day-by-day pay. They were starting to see the customers that were getting disconnected regularly needed some way to pay daily. They're getting paid daily. The only way they could pay was daily or weekly. And so they didn't have a lot of customers that they saw had additional dollars at the end. But I can go back to see we can use their policy. They have one of the, and I know that we heard it before, but they do have there's a lot of case studies on Sacramento.
Right, see how that turned out, and I think that might be a way to find out whether we can implement it properly, and if we don't, they don't lose out in the process of figuring it out. Thank
But
you.
once again, SMUD wasn't looking just at low-income customers. They were looking at customers that were not able to shift their load, and that's not necessarily just low-income customers.
So it's still going to apply the same, it should, right? Or they'd have to make the designation, it depends on how the designation was made, right, on that reimbursement program, so that's a good point.
We can see what information we can get and share. There's a lot of information out there, so we'll share.
No, this one's first. Okay, back to the same thing. If y'all are thinking about these things, so I'm gonna need you to feed these to me so I can get your thoughts down. But in the end, we've got to have questions that are potentially yes or no questions. Michael, you have some?
Yeah, it's probably already on your list, but one of the obvious questions is, should we implement a time of use rate?
Yeah, that's the first question I've got here. Yep. Anything else? Okay.
Based on discussions with other members, I think we might also want a question of, should we introduce, block rates? Put that as a question. You got to remember, these are questions that are going to go in a survey to us on the committee so that we can pass on, let's say, how many people agree that we should do block rates within this committee. So we need to, these are questions we're asking ourselves essentially.
But that's where I think like case studies help in seeing like who has, like Los Angeles uses the time of use plus an inclining block rate, and that's for customers who are not able to shift their load from peak. So, but
Say that again, Dee Dee. I'm sorry. I'm trying to follow.
to answer to Michael is that I think we really need some more information, and I think case studies help. We talked about SMUD. We could talk about Los Angeles, and they have a time of use, but they also offer the inclining block rate for customers who are not able to shift their load. And this is where my concern is: how do we help those people who cannot shift? And they're not just low-income customers. It's not just low-income customers who might not be able to shift their load, because with good education and outreach, we can help low-income customers shift their usage. So.
Okay, well, I think I'm getting the question there, and it's really more than one question. One of them is, should we offer load, time of use and declining block and have people have the option for those? I think that's your question. So please write it down, send me a text, make sure we're together. We'll work on it. We've got about a week or so here to get this together, and we'll turn it over to Dr. Romero and the legal department, and hopefully we'll get this thing out within week and a half or so, and then we'll have the results pretty quick. Now, this is going to be done not with SurveyMonkey, but it's going to be done with, I saw the name of it here. Somebody told me it's called QUALTRX, Qualtrics. But it's Qualtrics this is not, I mean, you don't write your name on here. It's an anonymous response. Hopefully that will increase the response. I won't know I'll know how many people responded. I won't know who did or who didn't. We've had some concerns that people have said, I don't want to be voting and I don't want to have to commit there in public. So hopefully this will get people to go ahead and feel comfortable to give their true position without feeling like there's any repercussions to them. Yeah, Mike. And it also helps the councilwoman because, you know, no one knows what her position is, and just in general, she can get included. Go ahead.
You may have already been planning on doing it this way, but I would certainly suggest that once we think we have a list of questions, that you send those out for us to look at. So you might suggest a new way of asking it, or spur additional questions when people see the list.
Yeah, we got to turn this around pretty quick. Okay. So I'm not talking about, you know, we got to get this done. Okay. I'm sorry to keep pushing here, but we need to get it done.
But I'd hope at least once you'd send out, here's our initial set, give people a day or two to maybe help reword them or add a few.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Okay. All right. And when we, remember, the question will have a lead in, okay, and then it'll have a question. You have to have the reason you're asking the question. To Al's point, he's got a long question here, but that's in the lead in. Then the question is yes or no, okay? Wait a minute. Okay, Dr. Cantu has a question. Please, go ahead.
Yes, to Dee Dee's point, the lead up to the question, given the digital divide that we have in San Antonio, what are some of the case studies that have helped deliver messages, education messages to people, households, renters that do not have internet access?
Okay, who wants to take that? How are y'all going to educate people that don't have?
Yes, given our digital divide here in San Antonio.
Yeah, that don't have, I was getting there, that don't have electronic capability.
Correct.
Dr. Cantu, we know that we're going to have to continue with a lot and growing what we have already. So some of that is continuing to knock on doors. But if we think about we're talking about time of use rates, for instance, right? And how to tell someone that maybe you're coming into your usage is too high based on your what the time of the day is, and you're at the peak of the day. Ideally, with technology, we'd be able to generate a phone call, right? And be able to create, here's some information. So it's not just, hey, if you keep using your power at the same level it's at, then you're going to pay really high money, but also help encourage information on usage. What can you do in this moment to help reduce your usage? And if you can't shift your load, give them some tips on what they can do. So it would be a combination of ongoing outreach. And at the same time, I know this is something, Dr. Cantu, you and I have spoke about, it's the bundling care, right? So whenever our crew team, our energy advisors, whoever it is, has an opportunity to speak with a customer, it's not just about finding the payment plan that fits them right then in that moment. It's also about saying, can I give you some tips? Do you have a moment for me to answer or can you answer some questions? So if they can't get on My Energy portal, being able to ask them the same types of questions and give them the same types of energy savings so that they know how to help prevent their bill from being high moving forward. Does that answer your question?
Oh, yeah, that's just a question. Yes, it does. And I just wanted to be sure that we have something in there for what Rita's asking for in terms of that digital divide and demand management, because it does require some real-time information. But again, given our constraints that we have here in the city, some of the structures, how have other cities, how have other case studies addressed it?
So just a couple of points, Dr. Cantu. If you look at this report that Deanna and her group did, you'll find at the back there's like 4.5 pages of partners, And we'll have to leverage that through these partnerships and through the churches and through the neighborhood associations and through the city council office and the precinct offices. So you're going to have to find a way to leverage, you know, CPS can't get out there, but if they can train the trainers on some of these, then, and they're close to these people, and frankly, they're interfacing with them, you know, not all of them, but a lot of them are interfacing with these folks all the time, and that's just one more thing they can interface with them. So we've got to find ways to leverage our work here. Okay, we got a legal comment coming.
I was able to do some quick look backs, Dee Dee, to understand why we didn't look at LADWP as a good source. California law is simply very different on how rates can be recovered. So I do want to warn you that comparing to a California utility trying to implement a rate structure like that in Texas makes it a little bit difficult. So there is a provision of California state law that requires all utilities in California to set a baseline rate. So it is a lot like our structure for SAW right now, where they say, okay, this amount of electricity is what the state has said is an amount for survivability. It's determined by climate zone in California. And that is the lowest baseline rate that then sets for a structure like one that you described. That legal structure is just not there in Texas. Texas has an entirely different structure, so it's a little bit hard to.
But we can charge but there's a inclining block rate for commercial customers, right?
Yeah, yes, but I mean, that is not a beneficial rate it's an inclining, not, you know, so it's the more you.
It's declining for commercial customers.
Sorry, the more you use, the less you pay. But it still reflects the ability to recover the costs of providing the service to that customer, unlike the converse of that. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, anything else online? Anything else here? We're adjourned. Michael, sorry.
So I have some questions that really don't fall into those three categories. So hopefully we'll entertain some others. Because, you know, ultimately we're trying to give advice to the board. So one of them would be a question along the line, and actually let me give the background. So many of these things that we want to do requires this new IT transformation. So one of my questions would be, should we encourage the board to find a way to fast track this IT transformation? Because obviously with resources, we can make that go quicker and we can get to the point where we can implement some of these suggestions. So I would have a question along that line. Another question I would ask has to do with the service availability charge. We've had discussions in the past where that service availability charge should probably be higher because that's trying to recover the fixed costs that the utility has. So one of the questions would be, should we recommend an increase in the service availability charge?
I already have that question.
Okay. And then along those same lines, we could also ask a question is, should we consider tiering the service availability charge? In other words, people that use in say 2 or 3 blocks, if I use this much within this first block of energy, I have a lower service availability charge. If I'm in another tier, my service availability charge is higher. That way we are able to charge those who use a whole lot more, a little bit more in that service availability charge.
Okay, while you're on that, should we ask the question that we talked about on folks that have netting meters that aren't paying the full they aren't paying back the full fixed cost of what they're getting. So
sure,
there's been some discussion about should the netting meter customer be paying a more serviceability charge?
Yeah.
I had that one down, but y'all can say yes or no.
I agree with that one also, Reed.
And then I do have one more question, and let me give a little bit of the background. Is I think we all agree that the city transfer is an important thing. It's a revenue source for the city. It's taking essentially the profits of this organization and giving it to the, you know, the folks that own the utility. But in my opinion, that even though it's public knowledge, is sort of a hidden fee, that transfer part is buried into the rate. So what I would suggest, and we can put it into the form of the question, is I think that city transfer, which I would call a city utility tax, I think we should pull that out of the rate, and that should be a separate line on the bill. Other large utilities do this. Municipals have a separate line of a city utility tax in it, and it's right there so people understand, and there's that transparency of they're paying 14% towards the city transfer.
Okay, let's be clear on that. We don't make a profit here, okay? We recover cost, and then we charge the we charge the customers that percent of the cost as a fee to the city for their ownership.
Okay.
So it's really not the same thing. We'll have to get the legal department to work on that one a
Okay,
bit.
well,
okay?
so the terminology there is a little
Yeah,
different,
no,
but my concept is that fee or whatever you want to call it, or tax, that
Should it
needs to
be a separate
I think
line
it
item?
should be a separate line, and I'd like to have a question along those lines.
Let me go ahead and get a written response to your question because it's a little bit complex, but part of the issue with that, it's not a tax at all. In fact, if we were an investor-owned utility, any private held entity would expect a return on its investment. So part of that is intended to return to the city for its willingness to invest in our overall provision of electrical services and grid in the state of Texas. So it is comparable in some ways to a franchise tax, but it's not the same thing. Let me get a written answer to you,
Sure.
but I think that the chances of the success of changing that structure are limited, and the ability to, because we don't just take, I don't want anyone to think that we take whatever our costs are for the provision of services and slap 14% on that, and then that goes to the customer, because that's just simply not how the calculation occurs. So I'll get with Corey and we will get a written response. I think it's probably the way to be the clearest. No. Yes, we recover our costs. No, there's no, just add 14% for everyone down.
Yeah, well,
I don't know what the right way to word it is, but I'd like for that.
all he's asking for, just soon, and all he's asking for is should that amount, whatever it is, however it's done, be on the bill as a separate line item, when we're capable of it.
Yeah,
Go
I was
ahead.
gonna just say that maybe it would be helpful for us to historically understand how this happened with the bond indenture that
Right.
put the onus of the 14%. So that gives us a perspective. The other thing that I want to bring up quickly is that on the census tract information, I think it would be helpful for me to have, in addition to what is there, is the census tract data on the average age of housing stock, because that will also help us discern some of the moving forward projects in terms of
Okay, that's a good point. So we're 3 years past the census, and in about the third or fourth year, they come out with their
2020.
big book.
Right.
That gives you all kinds of things. What's the average number of in this census tract? What's the average number of bedrooms? How many bathrooms? I don't know if that's available right now, but as it becomes available, it should be really meaningful.
But if we even took the 2020 census, it could tell us that the average house in census tract 1302 is 70 years old.
Yeah, no,
It really does help us
I
extrapolate.
looked at that data, and I don't remember if it gives the average age of the housing stock.
It
I
should.
just don't remember that.
Yeah, it does.
It does? Okay. Well, if it does, and I mean, then it can be put on there, and it'll be meaningful. And I guess Deanna and her folks can pull that up when it's available. Okay. Anybody else online? Let me look. Nobody online? I'm looking around. Nobody here. We're adjourned.